Okay, let's unpack this. You've brought us a deep dive into the world of Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas, JNVs, specifically looking at the selection test for 2026.
That's right.
And these schools, they're kind of a unique opportunity, aren't they? Especially for talented kids in rural India, almost like a golden ticket.
Exactly. A golden ticket is a good way to put it. And the document we're looking at, the prospectus for the JMV selection test, the JNVST for 2026-27, well, that's basically the rule book for getting that ticket.
Right. So our mission here isn't just to read the rules aloud. We want to cut through the official jargon, pull out the really crucial bits you need to know.
Help people understand what the system's about, who it's really for.
And the exact steps involved. Applying, getting selected. This whole deep dive is really for you, the listener, who wants a clear, solid understanding of this whole initiative without getting bogged down in the fine print. So where do we start? What exactly are these Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas? What makes them, well, special?
Okay, so at their heart, they're co-ed residential schools. But the big thing is they're fully financed, fully administered by the government of India.
Government run, but through a specific body.
Yeah, through the Navodaya Vidyalaya Samiti. It's an autonomous organization.
And they didn't just pop up, right? There was a specific reason.
Absolutely. They grew out of the National Policy of Education back in 1986, and the why is key. It was about providing really good quality modern education.
Modern education meaning?
Well, it's broad. Includes culture, values, environmental awareness, adventure activities, PE, the whole package. But the focus was primarily on talented children from rural areas, kids who might not otherwise get that kind of chance.
So that rural focus is central. How does that translate inside the school? Language, academics?
Well, they try to be inclusive, so instruction is in the mother tongue or the regional language right up to class 8.
Okay.
Then it shifts. English becomes the medium for maths and science, and Hindi for social science.
And academically, what standard are we talking?
They follow the Central Board of Secondary Education, CBSE. So students sit for the standard CBSE board exams.
Right, CBSE. Now, the big question, is it genuinely free for these kids?
The core parts are, yes, education itself, board and lodging, uniforms, textbooks, all free. There is a nominal fee, though, called the Vidyalaya Vikas Niti, or VVN.
VVM, how much is that?
It's Rs 600 per month. And this is really important, it's only collected from students in classes 9 to 12, not the younger ones.
Ah, okay. And even for those older students, are there exemptions?
Yes, significant ones. It's completely waived for SCST students, Divyang students, that's differently abled students, all girl students, and kids from families below the poverty line, BPL families.
So for a huge chunk of the students these schools are aimed at, it really is free residential education.
Exactly. That's the goal.
Is there a specific rule for government employees' children?
Yes, there is. If a student is in classes 9 to 12, doesn't fall into those exempted categories like SCST, girl, BPL, and their parent is a government employee, then the fee is Rs 1,500 per month, or the actual children education allowance the parent gets, whichever is less. But it won't be less than the standard Rs 600 VVN.
Got it. So links to the parents' benefits, but with a floor and a ceiling.
Precisely.
And beyond academics, what's the broader mission? You mentioned culture, values.
Yeah, it's bigger than just exams. They aim for students to be competent in 3 languages. And, this is a big one, they actively promote national integration.
I would do that.
Through a mandatory student migration program. In Class IX, students move between schools in Hindi-speaking and non-Hindi-speaking states for a year.
Wow, mandatory migration. That's quite something.
It is. And they also aim to be sort of resource centers, focal points to help improve education in other local schools nearby, sharing what they learn in their facilities.
That national integration part really stands out. So how big is this network now? How many JNVs are actually running?
As of this prospectus, we're looking at 654 functional.
Wow, 654 spread across the country.
Pretty much. They're in 27 states and 08 union territories. Almost everywhere.
Wasn't the original plan for one in every district?
That's the long-term goal, yeah. They're doing it in phases. So far, 689 JNVs have been sanctioned.
But not quite one per district yet.
Not quite. The prospectus actually lists 6 districts that still don't have a sanctioned JNV, places like Central Delhi, New Delhi, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Mumbai.
Major urban centers, interestingly.
Yes. And it also specifically notes that no JNV has been sanctioned at all in Tamil Nadu.
That's a significant exception. Any other types of JMVs mentioned?
Yeah, briefly, they mentioned some additional JNVs sanctioned specifically for districts with large SCST populations and also some special JNVs, though details aren't elaborated much in this section.
Okay. And for Class 6, the main entry point, how many students usually get in per school?
Typically, the maximum intake is 80 students per Vigilia through this selection test.
Max 80. Can that change?
Yes, the governing body has the right to reduce that number, maybe down to 40, or even not admit anyone in a particular year if, say, the facilities aren't adequate or there aren't enough suitable candidates.
Right. Depends on local conditions. Okay, so we've got a good picture of what JNVs are, their goals, their scale. Now, the million-dollar question. How do you get in? Tell us about the JNV selection test for 2026.
Okay, the JNVST. This is it. The gateway for admission to Class 6 for the 2026-27 school year.
And it's not just one single test date for everyone.
Correct. They run it in 2 phases, mainly based on geography and climate, things like that.
Okay. When are they?
Phase 1 is scheduled for Saturday, December 13th, 2025. Phase 2 is Saturday, April 11th, 2026. Both start sharp at 11:30 a.m.
And you, the applicant, would know which phase applies to your district.
Yes, the prospectus lists the states and specific districts for each phase. It covers winter-bound, summer-bound areas, that sort of thing.
How do you actually apply? Is it a paper form?
Nope, it's all online now, which is good. And importantly, applying is free. There's no application fee.
Free application? Online? Where do people go?
You access it via the NVS admission portal. There's a link directly from their main website, which is navodaya.gov.in.
Okay, navodaya.gov.in. And the deadline. There must be a deadline.
Absolutely crucial. The last date to get that online application submitted is July 29th, 2025.
July 29th, 2025.
Yeah.
That's a date to circle in red if you're planning to apply.
Definitely don't miss it.
Applying online.
Yeah.
What kind of things do you need to have ready? Documents, info.
Right. You'll need soft copies of a few things. They need to be in JPG format and usually quite small, like 10 to 100 kilobytes.
Okay, what document?
You need a recent photograph of the candidate, a scanned signature of a parent, and a scanned signature of the candidate, plus either the candidate's Aadhaar details or a valid residence certificate issued by the government for the parent.
And information to fill in.
Standard stuff, mostly.
Yeah.
Your state, district, block, the Aadhaar number if you have it. There are also mentions of APAID and PEN number. These are student identification numbers.
APAR. That's the new Unified Student ID, right?
Yes, essentially. And there's a note for NIOS candidates' National Institute of Open Schooling. They need a specific B certificate and proof they live in the district.
What if families find the online process difficult? Maybe internet access is an issue.
That's a really important point the prospectus addresses. The online platform itself is open source, works on different devices. But crucially, the JNVs themselves offer help.
How does that work?
You can go to the help desk at your nearest JNV. You just need to bring the required photos and signatures, maybe on a mobile phone, and have the phone with you for OTP verification. They will help you upload the application completely free of charge.
That's excellent support, especially for the target audience in rural areas.
It really is. It removes a potential barrier.
Now, accuracy. How important is it that all the information filled in is spot on?
It's not just important, it's vital, absolutely critical. Everything you enter must be correct and match the documents you'll eventually need to show if you get selected.
What happens if there's a mistake? Or if information isn't, well, truthful?
The prospectus is very clear. If you provide false information, especially about where you live or where you studied, your application can be rejected at any stage. Even after selection, they can cancel the admission.
So double-check everything before submitting. Can you change things after you submit?
Generally, no. Once submitted, that's usually it. However, they do mention a very limited correction window that opens for a few days after the main deadline.
Ah, okay. What can you correct then?
Only very specific fields. Gender, area, meaning rural or urban, category, like SCST/OBC, disability status, and the medium of examination. Not things like name, date of birth, or district.
So core details are locked in. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned area, rural, urban. This seems fundamental to the J&V idea. How is that defined? It sounds like it could be tricky.
It is fundamental, and the definition is very precise, quite strict actually. Your status, rural or urban, is decided only by the location of the school where you studied classes 3, 4, and V.
Not where you live.
Not primarily for this classification, no. It's about the school's location. If the school you attended for any of those 3 years is in an area officially notified as rural by the government as of the application deadline, you're considered rural for that year.
And if any of those schools were urban.
That's the key. If you spend even one day studying in a school located in an urban area during Class 3, 4, or V, you are classified as an urban candidate for the purpose of this test.
Wow. So even a short stint in an urban school flips you out of the rural category for the quota.
Exactly. It's a very sharp dividing line. It really highlights how strictly they manage that 75% rural quota. It means a talented student whose family may be moved temporarily could lose rural status very easily.
That's a critical detail. What about the OBC category? You mentioned reservations earlier. Anything specific there?
Yes, another potential pitfall. For the OBC reservation, they only accept certificates that are on the central list of OBCs, the one published by the Government of India.
Not the state lists.
No. If your specific OBC community is recognized by your state government, but it's not on that national central list, you won't get the OBC reservation benefit here. You'll be treated as a general category candidate.
Okay, so applicants need to check the central OBC list specifically.
Absolutely, it's crucial.
And all this residence, where you studied, your category gets verified later.
Yes, after the results. If you're provisionally selected, that's when the detailed verification of all your proofs happens. Residence proof, age proof, eligibility confirmation, category certificates, proof of rural study, everything.
Right. It's provisional until proven. Let's dig into eligibility then. What are the absolute must-haves to even be allowed to sit for the test?
The rules are strict, no doubt. The number one rule is about the district.
District specificity.
Exactly. You have to be a genuine resident of the district where the JNV is located, and you must be studying Class V in a school in that same district. The district you live in and the district you study Class V in must be the same one you're applying for.
And you need proof.
Yes, proof of residence in that district is required. They also mention rules for districts that might have been recently split or reorganized, but the core principle is study and residence in the target JNV's district.
What about age? Is there a narrow window?
Very narrow. You must have been born between May 1st, 2014 and July 31st, 2016, both dates included.
May 1st, 2014 to July 31st, 2016. That's precise.
Extremely. Your birth certificate is the proof. If there's any doubt about the age, they can refer the case to a medical board to confirm. But if your birthday falls even one day outside that range, you're not eligible. Full stop.
Ouch. Okay, and you have to be in Class V right now for the whole year.
Yes. You must be studying in Class V for the entire 2025-26 academic session in a government school or government-aided or another recognized school or doing a NIOS B certificate course.
In that same district again.
In that same district, yes. And you need to have been promoted and actually admitted to Class V before July 31st, 2025.
So if someone finished Class V last year, maybe took a break, they can't apply now.
Absolutely not. The prospectus is very clear. If you've already passed or studied Class V in a previous academic year, you are not eligible. They specifically look out for repeaters, and candidature will be canceled if discovered.
And you need to have passed Classes 3 and 4 from recognized schools as well.
Correct. You need to have studied and passed Class 3, 4, and V from a recognized school, spending one full academic session in each of those classes. Continuous study is key.
What about the NIOS candidates? Any specifics for them?
For NIOS, they need to pass that B certificate course by September 15th, 2025, and meet the same age criteria. An interesting point for them is how rural-urban status is decided.
How does that work for NIOS?
Since they might not attend a physical school in the same way, their rural-urban status is based on their actual residence location, certified by officials. And crucially, a NIOS candidate residing in an urban area is not eligible for the rural quota seats.
Makes sense, and you only get one chance at this test.
Strictly one shot. The rules state, no candidate is eligible to appear in the selection test for the second time under any circumstances.
One attempt. That adds pressure. Is Aadhaar mandatory?
It seems so. The prospectus mentions the Aadhaar Act, requiring candidates to provide proof of Aadhaar number or undergo authentication. If a child doesn't have one,
They need to apply for it.
yes, and the JNV Help Desk can even assist with Aadhaar enrollment. Provisional registration for the test might be allowed using a parent's residence certificate while the Aadhaar application is processed, but eventually the Aadhaar data is required and validated.
Okay, that's a lot of hoops to jump through just to be eligible. Assuming you meet all that, how are the actual seats divided up? You said rural students get priority.
Huge priority. The baseline rule is at least 75% of the seats in each JNV are reserved for candidates selected from the rural areas of that specific district.
And to qualify for that 75%.
You need to have studied in classes 3, 4, and V continuously in recognized schools located in a designated rural area. And crucially, that Class V study must be in a rural school within the same district as the JNV you're applying to.
What about NIO's kids for the rural quota?
They need a specific certificate from a designated authority like the DM or Tehsildar, confirming they've resided and pursued their studies in a rural area for the last 3 years.
Okay, so 75% minimum for verified rural candidates. What about the rest? The urban candidates?
Right. Urban candidates, remember, that's anyone who studied even briefly in an urban school in classes 3, 4, or V compete for the remaining seats. That's up to 25% of the total.
They compete just amongst themselves.
No, they compete in the open merit category. This pool includes both urban candidates and also any rural candidates who score high enough to qualify on open merit above and beyond the 75% rural quota. So it's purely merit-based for this segment.
I see. So rural kids could potentially take more than 75% if they score highly.
Theoretically, yes. The 75% is a floor for rural, not necessarily a ceiling.
Now, on top of this rural-urban split, there are category reservations. SC, ST, OBC.
Yes, these are layered on. For scheduled caste, SC, and scheduled tribe, ST candidates, the reservation is proportional to their population in that specific district.
Proportional, but is there a minimum?
Yes, and this is key. The reservation for SC/ST is never less than the national average, which is currently set at 15% for SC and 7.5% for ST, even if the district population percentage is lower.
So a minimum safety net. Is there a maximum combined?
Yes, the combined reservation for SC and ST together cannot exceed 50% of the seats.
And if there aren't enough qualified candidates in one category, say SC?
The prospectus mentions these reservations are interchangeable between SC and ST if qualified candidates are unavailable in one category but available in the other.
And these reserve seats are separate from the merit list.
Yes. Importantly, candidates selected under the SC/ST quota are chosen over and above any SC/ST candidates who get selected purely on open merit.
Okay, what about OBC reservation?
There's a 27% reservation for OBC candidates. Again, this is over and above the SC and ST quotas. And as we stressed before, this is strictly for OBC candidates who are on the central list maintained by the Government of India.
Central list only. Got it. Any specific reservation for girls?
Yes. A minimum of 1/3, 13, of the total seats in each JNV are reserved for girls.
A minimum of 1/3. How do they ensure that?
The prospectus says NVS might give preference to girls over boys during selection based on their criteria to make sure that 1/3 minimum is met.
And for differently abled students, Divyang candidates?
Yes, there's reservation for them as per Government of India norms. The prospectus lists the categories covered: orthopedically handicapped, hearing impaired, visually handicapped.
What defines differently ables for this purpose?
It's defined as having a disability of 40% or more, as certified by a competent medical authority, usually the chief medical officer or a medical board. The prospectus also specifically mentions acid attack victims and dwarfism under this provision now.
Okay. What about transgender candidates?
The prospectus notes there isn't a separate reservation category for transgender students. For reservation purposes under other categories like SC/ST/OBC or rural-urban, they're included under the boys category calculation.
That's a very complex, layered system of reservations. Rural priority first, then SC/ST/OBC on top, plus girls and Divyang quotas.
It is complex. It's designed to ensure representation from various sections of society, particularly rural areas, while maintaining merit selection. There's even a detail about allocating the rural open seats block-wise within the district based on the rural population of each block to ensure geographical spread within the district, too.
Wow. Block level allocation, too.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift to the test day itself. You've passed eligibility, applied, got your admit card. What happens at the exam center?
First thing, you must go to the specific examination center that's printed on your admit card. No changes allowed. You can't just show up at a different JNV test center.
What do you need to bring to get in? ID checks.
Yes, you need your admit card, obviously. And along with that, either the candidate's Aadhaar card, or if Aadhaar wasn't used in the application, the parent's government-approved residence certificate that was uploaded. They'll match your photo.
Makes sense. The test itself, is it only in English or Hindi?
No, it's offered in various languages, and it varies depending on the state or union territory.
So how do you choose?
You choose the language medium for your test booklet when you fill out the online application form, and that choice is final. You get the test booklet in that language, and you can't switch on the test day.
Okay, choose carefully during application.
Mm-hmm.
What's the test structure like? How long is it?
It's a 2-hour test. Runs from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m.
2 hours straight.
Yes. It's a single test booklet containing all three sections, and all the questions are objective type multiple choice.
How many questions in total?
There are 80 questions in total, and they add up to 100 marks.
And any extra time for divvying students?
Yes, students with disabilities get an additional 40 minutes.
Okay, 80 questions, 100 marks, 2 hours. What are the three sections?
All right, section 1 is the mental ability test, or MMAT. This is the biggest section. 40 questions, worth 50 marks. The suggested time is 60 minutes.
Mental ability. What does that involve? Maths problems?
No, it's entirely nonverbal. It's all about figures, patterns, shapes. Things like finding the odd one out in a set of figures, matching identical figures, completing a pattern or a series of figures.
Visual puzzles, basically.
Exactly. Visual reasoning. Analogy between figures, completing geometric shapes like squares or triangles, mirror images, visualizing how paper looks after folding and punching holes, finding a hidden figure within a complex one. It assesses general mental processing, spatial awareness, that kind of thing, without relying on language.
Okay, 40 questions on visual reasoning. What's section 2?
Section 2 is the arithmetic test. This is smaller, 20 questions worth 25 marks. Suggested time is 30 minutes.
Arithmetic, so maths.
Yes, this tests basic numerical competency. The topics listed are pretty standard for this age group. Number systems, the 4 fundamental operations, add, subtract, multiply, divide, factors and multiples, decimals, fractions.
Practical maths, too, like money measurement.
Yes, measurement of length, mass, capacity, time, money. Also, simplification of expressions, distance, time, speed, and interestingly, basic profit and loss, but the prospectus specifically notes that percentage calculation isn't typically required for those problems. Also, perimeter and area of simple shapes like squares, rectangles, triangles, and basic data interpretation from graphs and charts.
So core arithmetic skills and application, 20 questions. And the third section?
The third section is the language test. This is also 20 questions, 25 marks, suggested 30 minutes.
Language, grammar, vocabulary.
Primarily reading comprehension, the format is usually 4 passages of text. Each passage is followed by 5 multiple-choice questions testing your understanding of what you just read.
Okay, so M, visual, arithmetic, maths, and language reading. How do you actually mark the answers?
You get a separate answer sheet called an OMR sheet, optical mark recognition. You have to use only a blue or black ballpoint pen, no pencils.
And you fill in bubbles.
Yes, you darken the circle corresponding to the answer you think is correct, A, B, C, or D.
What if you make a mistake? Can you erase or cross it out?
Absolutely not. This is critical. The OMR sheet instructions are very strict. No changes, no striking through, no white correction fluid, no erasing. Any answer with corrections or improper marking will simply not be evaluated by the scanner.
So be sure before you mark, like filling a lottery ticket, as you said earlier.
Exactly that feeling. Once marked, it's done.
How is it scored? Is there negative marking for wrong answers?
Good news here. No negative marking. Each correct answer gets 1.25 marks. An incorrect answer gets 0, but doesn't deduct marks.
So it always makes sense to attempt every question, even if you have to guess.
Absolutely. Never leave a question unanswered.
Is there a minimum score needed to pass, overall, or in each section?
Yes, and this is really important. It's not just about the total score. You must secure minimum qualifying marks in each of the 3 sections separately: mental ability, arithmetic, and language.
So you can't bomb one section and make up for it entirely in others.
Correct. You need a basic level of competency across the board. The exact qualifying marks for each section might vary slightly year to year or aren't always explicitly stated beforehand in recent prospectuses, but the principle holds: pass all 3 sections individually.
Okay. What about managing time? The sections have suggested times, but can you switch between them?
The times, 60 mins mess and 30 mins arithmetic, 30 mins language, are suggestions. You have the full 2 hours for the entire paper. You can allocate your time as you see fit, but it's wise to stick close to the suggestions. They usually ring bells at intervals, like every 30 minutes, to help you keep track.
Any rules about arriving late or leaving early?
Yes. You need to be seated by 11:00 a.m., half an hour before the test starts. No latecomers are generally admitted after a certain point. And you cannot leave the examination hall until the full 2 hours are up and the invigilator collects your OMR sheet and question booklet.
Okay, strict timing. Now, what happens if 2 students get exactly the same total score? It must happen.
It does. And they have a very clear tie-breaking procedure set out.
How does it work?
It's hierarchical. First, they compare scores in the mental ability test. Higher MAT score wins.
If MAT scores are also tied.
Then they look at the arithmetic test score. Higher score wins.
Still tied.
Then they compare language test scores.
Okay. What if all 3 section scores are identical too?
Then it goes to reservation category with the specific preference order. ST candidates get preference over SC, who get preference over OBC, who get preference over general.
Wow. Category preference in a tiebreak. What if they're the same category too?
Then preference is given to girls over boys.
And if they're the same gender as well?
Then finally, the younger candidate in age gets the seat.
That is an incredibly detailed tiebreaker sequence. Covers every eventuality.
It has to ensure fairness and transparency when competition is high.
Okay, so the test is done, OMR sheet handed in. What's next? When do results come out?
First, the admit cards. Those will be available for download from the NVS website or the application portal sometime before the test dates. Keep an eye out for that.
And the results themselves?
They usually aim to announce results by the end of March 2026 for the JNVs that start their session earlier, summer bound, and by May 2026 for the ones that start later, winter bound.
Where do you find the results?
Online?
Yes, several places. You can check the official application portal where you applied, the main NVS website, navodaya.gov.in. They also put up lists physically at the concerned JNV itself, the Office of the District Education Officer, the District Magistrate's Office, and the Regional NVS Deputy Commissioner's Office.
So multiple ways to check. Will they contact you directly if selected? Yes. The principal of the JNV, where the student is selected, will inform the provisionally selected candidates directly, usually first by phone, using the registered mobile number given in the application.
So keep that phone active.
Definitely. And that phone call is typically followed up with an official selection letter sent by speed post.
What if someone is selected but decides not to join or fails the document check? Are there wait lists?
Yes, there are. NVS usually releases wait lists. The prospectus says typically only 2 wait lists to fill vacancies that arise due to unwillingness or inability of initially selected candidates to join.
Only have 2 wait lists.
Yeah.
And is there a final cutoff date for all admissions for that year?
Yes. The entire admission process for the 2026-27 session, including filling seats from waitlists, is targeted to be closed latest by December 31st, 2026.
Okay, December 31st, 2026 is the final deadline. Now, this provisional selection, you mentioned it before, it sounds like getting your name on that first list isn't the absolute final step.
Absolutely not. And this is where things get really interesting and sometimes difficult for families. Getting provisionally selected is a major hurdle crossed, but it does not guarantee admission.
So what's the catch?
It's all conditional. Conditional on submitting and successfully verifying all the required original certificates and documents with the JNV authorities. This is the final gatekeeper.
Document verification. What specific documents are we talking about here? What do families need to produce?
It's quite a list, and they need originals. Let's break it down. First, proof of age. The official birth certificate issued by the competent government authority.
Okay, birth certificate. What else?
Proof of eligibility, generally confirming you meet all the conditions we discussed earlier. Then, proof related to residence and study. A valid residence certificate for the parent, proving residence in the same district where the JNV is located and where the child studied Class V.
Residence proof for the parent.
Yes. And for NIAS candidates, that residence certificate needs specific details about the area and must be from the right authority. Also, that certificate from the headmaster of the school where the student studied Class V, confirming all the study details, which classes, where, when.
The headmaster certificate, right.
And if applying under the rural quota, a specific certificate confirming study in classes 3, 4, and V was indeed in schools located in recognized rural areas.
Got it. What about ID and health?
A copy of the candidate's Aadhaar card. A medical fitness certificate.
Fitness certificate. Okay. Anything else?
If claiming any category reservation, then the relevant original certificates. SC, ST, or OBC. Remember, central list only for OBC. If claiming disability status, the certificate from the chief medical officer confirming the type and percentage, minimum 40%. If applicable, a transgender certificate from the designated state authority.
That's comprehensive. Anything about that migration program?
Yes, an undertaking for migration. Families have to sign an undertaking agreeing to the mandatory migration in Class 9X if the student is required to participate.
So you agree to that potential move right at the admission stage?
Exactly. It's part of the package.
What about the transfer certificate, TC, from the child's current school? Is that needed right away for verification?
No, the TC comes slightly later. It's needed only after all these other documents have been verified by the JNV, and they've confirmed the admission. And that TC then usually needs to be countersigned by the local district education authorities, like the DEO or BEO.
So verification first, then formal TC. And just to confirm, you absolutely have to join the JNV in the district you applied from. No transfers.
Absolutely correct. The prospectus reiterates this. Admission is only to the JNV located in the district where the candidate resided and studied Class V and appeared for the test. No requests for shifting to another JNV will be entertained, regardless of the reason, medium of instruction preference, parents getting transferred, anything.
Very clear. Stick to your district JNV. Are there any other sort of final warnings or important points the prospectus emphasizes?
Yes, a few key ones. One is finality. In case of any dispute regarding selection or admission, the decision of the Navodaya Vidyalaya Samiti is final and binding on everyone.
NVS has the last word. What about challenging the test results? Rechecking.
No provision for that. They state clearly there's no reevaluation or retotaling of marks for the OMR answer scripts. The results processed are final.
Okay, and that mandatory migration for Class 9X.
They double down on it. It's linked to the national integration goal. If a student or their parents refuses to let the student migrate for that one academic year when required, the student will not be allowed to continue studying in the JNV, period.
That's a serious commitment they expect. It underlines how important that integration aspect is to the NVS philosophy.
It really does. Another strong caution is about providing false information.
We touched on that regarding the application, but it applies later too.
Yes. If it's discovered at any time, even after admission, even years later, that admission was secured using false or incorrect information about residence, age, category, previous schooling, etc., the admission is liable to be canceled.
Canceled even after years.
Yes. And they add that NVS reserves the right to recover any expenditure they incurred on that student's education.
That's a significant penalty. Recover costs.
It shows how seriously they view the integrity of the admission process. And finally, a reminder that incomplete applications, leaving columns blank or entries unfinished, are liable for rejection right at the start.
Okay, wow. That really takes us through the entire journey, doesn't it?
It does.
From understanding what JNVs are, their goals, their scale, through the nitty-gritty of applying online, the very strict eligibility criteria.
Decoding the test itself, the sections, the scoring, the tricky OMR sheet.
And finally, landing on that absolutely crucial step of document verification after provisional selection.
It really highlights the incredible opportunity these schools offer free, quality residential education, especially for rural talent.
But it also shows just how complex and, frankly, demanding the process is to access that opportunity. The rules are precise, the documentation requirements are stringent, the quotas are layered.
You really need to understand the system and follow every rule meticulously.
So what does this all mean for someone listening? It means this amazing opportunity exists, but it comes attached to a very structured, rule-bound system. Success isn't just about being talented. It's also about navigating these requirements perfectly.
Preparation and attention to detail are key, right from filling that first online form.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating model, and it leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? Consider the balance this JNV system strikes. It offers this life-changing opportunity on one hand, but on the other, it demands strict adherence to a multitude of specific criteria, requires rigorous proof, and even mandates participation in national integration through migration. What does this structured, complex model tell us about how access to opportunity works within large public systems? Something for you, the listener, to mull over.